Hello everybody, and happy 420 if you celebrate it. Now, I'm going to continue in the category of the JodyVision and go off track a little bit just to talk about the subject matter of life after death. And my last video, so I like to review the last video I did or two to kind of stay on track. So I'm kind of staying on track because I started bringing up how I feel like going out of body and being kind of aware of the spirit world kind of ties in with the subject matter of afterlife. And I think that's a colorful subject for everyone because anyone who's alive, you're going to die eventually. And hopefully it's going to be a very passive way of going out, like when you just get really old and you're actually maybe at a point where you look forward to it rather, than dread it, right? So I've talked to a number of old people that are at a point where they're like, hey, I've been looking forward to this actually because they know they're going to heaven and everything, right? So, or, it's kind of like at the end of a long day when you're looking forward to going to bed. And as I've mentioned, I almost think when we go to bed and sleep at night, it might be a little bit of practice for when the day comes, right? So it's one thing to like know you're gonna die someday, but it really stinks when something like, let's say you have an internal disease and you're given a warning by your doctor to just get ready to die, so you have to know for a week or two you're dying, or let's say there's other things going on, like maybe there's war brewing. In some places it really matters to people. Some people are getting caught in the crossfire of these wars right now. And we're really lucky if you're living in the United States like I am. I feel like I'm in a really safe little place where nothing bad could ever happen, And a lot of people I know don't really feel that threatened. Like we have a good enough military. We probably don't have to worry about it. So hopefully that's the case, and I don't get caught in a crossfire. I kind of enjoy where I live and what's going on for me. But anyways, I wanted to talk a little bit about, what I've learned from Rosey and Gary, especially because I moved to Montana to be close to Rosey, so I've been like her student and companion. It's almost as if I come into a position of servitude, but it's really mild to the extent that, as long as I'm living with Rosey and helping her around, I didn't have to pay rent, but I was able to, be able to work and have an income at the same time. So I kind of elected to keep it more part-timesy so I would have time to do things for them. So I never really saved a whole lot of money at the time. So really, since we've moved up here to live with Gary, I've started working more and more, making more connections, and now it's like they've kind of set me up to survive for right now. So that's pretty cool. But anyways, just to touch on what I know about life after death, like when my grandma flatlined in about 1988 maybe? No, I think it was 86. She got really sick and she almost died, and when she told me about her flatline experience, it seemed to bring a lot of valuable confirmation of life after death. And so along now some of the stuff she experienced in her afterlife or her near-death experience brings confirmation to the notion that we have a being such as Jesus. She wasn't sure if she was talking to Jesus or Michael, and we know we have an angel named Michael, but at the same time, the Urantia suggests that Jesus' other name could be Michael. And so that's where we have to look at, some of the spiritual teachings we're getting, like let's say when we say Christianity, is a modality of spiritual learning, and a lot of times the mistake we make in this way is to think that God sat up in heaven with his pen and paper and wrote the Bible down to us. But what's really going on there is ideally a book being provided to us that has confirmation in it, so it should go hand in hand with our life experience rather, and with the understanding that it's had a lot of human hands all over it in order to translate it and translate it and translate it, and in some cases even influence it for their own reasons. So that's where, when you're a Bible student and you're learning out of the Bible or teaching out of the Bible, we should never imply that this was a message sent to us directly from God, rather messages that reflect the messages of God because somebody's had to interpret and write it. So it's almost like we're really just getting sunlight from the moon when we're reading out of the Bible, as far as knowing what God thinks. What you really want to do is get yourself into the direct sunlight, and so that's what Christianity should be taking us to, is to where we do communicate directly to God, or what we call Jesus, and that everybody is subject to the same reality. That if this is part of the universal construct, in that conscious presence exists on all these different tiers, from, we might have an original source of conscious presence, that's what we call God, and then what we're calling Jesus is the Son. It's really just the point where the universe has seen its first state of personhood. That is the ancestor to the rest of us. But at the same time, is a being that we're all connected to automatically. So this doesn't matter if you believe in it or not, or what you call it. If you want to say his name is Jesus or Josh, or, and we have different names. So the rest of the world didn't have this understanding until Jesus came. So we did know we have a spirit reality. We did know we had a Father in heaven. And so even the Indians, like the Native American people, they call it the great grandfather. So it's like saying we all have one ancestor. We are all related. Okay, so it's a great concept in philosophy. So anyways, I see a lot of Christian people online on the near-death experience or afterlife pages, and they're just like, I'm a Christian, but I don't know if I should be, because some of the stuff in the Bible isn't correct, or something like that, or because of the things that people tell them, and or because they don't think they should believe in reincarnation. And so that's why my grandma's flatline experience was interesting, because not only was she talking to she's kind of having a Christian afterlife. She saw the time that Jesus was put on the cross and stuff like that. But at the same time, she was getting confirmation that we do reincarnate. So people that are Christians don't think we reincarnate, and that you only die and go to heaven, and like you get one chance, and if you blow it, then it's eternal hell. Whereas the Buddhists, particularly the Tibetan Buddhists, seem to be open to multiple options, that you may actually spend time in a heavenly place, but then even reincarnate back to earth after that. So that's kind of where I think some of the people are being born now could be people like that. And I like to think maybe I'm one of them. Maybe that's why I don't think this place is right, no matter what they tell you. Is I've been in a higher realm, and so my job is to get back where I've been, and help a few people get there. So that's kind of exciting to think that it actually goes on, and that you may live multiple lifetimes. You may have interesting experiences between lives, and that the real reality is in the disembodied state. And it seems like the physical reality, it seems to be less significant when you're in the spirit state, and that's what a lot of people keep telling us. And so that should give you that sense of security. It really doesn't matter, like, okay, when you're in the physical reality, you're out in nature, and you're not always protected. There are things in place to protect us, but sometimes they fail, and accidents happen out here in the physical realm. But when you're disembodied, then you're in the care of the spirit world. Then you're automatically safe, because you're in the care of what we call God and Jesus. You're in the care of the spirit world, so you're actually safer once you're disembodied. So it seems. So really, mostly our physical body is what's in danger. Now, our soul can be in danger. There are influences and things that can, take us down to a lower level. So that's what being satanic should really entail, is that you're just being taken to a lower level of consciousness and stuff like that. You're just not, you're not moving up through the levels and becoming higher, and having all your whole facility functioning. See, so it's the idea that we were just animals, and not that it's bad, but when you're just operating in your animal brain, there's only so much you can do. You're usually operating at a fear-based survival level. But when we're acting more at a human level, then we're also operating with our limbic and our neocortex togetherly. So when people go to a state of fear, it's almost like the neocortex and the limbic shut down, and we resort only to be in the animal brain. And so that's where they're saying that's what a true reptile is. There are people out here in the world, and it sucks that there are people with wealth and money who are only functioning on the reptile level, so that all they care about is being the king, right? They want to be the lizard king. And so nobody that is functioning in both all three, the animal, the limbic, and the neocortex, ever want to be in those positions to begin with. So that's why we don't have any good leadership in government or people who have power, right? Anyways, so a lot of colorful confirmation from my grandma's afterlife experience. And so when she died, I just thought, she's probably gonna do something cool for me, because she used to talk to me a lot about that. And before she died, I think I went to see her in 2014, and for about a year or so we stayed in touch. I can't remember exactly when it was. Maybe it was a couple years after I seen her last. It seems like we were able to bond over talking about afterlife stuff and spiritual stuff. Like before she died, even, I kind of had the attitude like, just think, Grandma, once you cross over, that's where the real reality is. That's where you're gonna feel great. And she's like, yeah, she's like, she said she was glad she's dying because she really wouldn't want to live to see what the world is becoming. She's like, I really feel sorry for everybody who survives that has to see what the world has in store, right? So not a very positive message. So it's like, bye. But at the same time, she could be over here next few days after crossing. So for all we know, my grandma's somebody's little girl or little boy someplace else going through elementary school just when she thought she was off the hook. Well, just laughing because I certainly didn't hear back from her. And so the question is, how come, why would somebody like that die and not even contact me? Geez, so I can't think that I've had any significant dreams or anything. Like, I think after my grandpa died, I had a couple things where I almost felt like I was in the same place he was. Like I was in this place where it seemed like it was a beautiful forest. I felt like there was like a magic doorway right here too, like a white doorway. That's how I felt. Like maybe I'd come through a magic doorway to sit where my grandpa was. Like I didn't see him. I just knew he was right over here. And it's kind of like when I was a kid, I used to go sit on the bench next to him and just watch his birds. So it was a very similar experience. I was kind of sitting on the space next to my grandpa and just watching the nature in front of us very similarly. And so it's kind of interesting because I really didn't know my grandpa as much and never really thought he liked me that much. So I almost think we've been contacted by him after he died, and he may have even hung around the house a little bit because me and my cousin Nessa were doing naughty things. We snuck out of the house. I think I was about maybe 16, so that could be around 90, 91. My grandpa had been dead a few years, and I swear I thought I heard him trying to wake up my grandma. He was in Virginia. And so we snuck out maybe another time that summer, and this time there was a vacant house across the street. So we were actually trespassing and using alcohol and contemplating having sex with some boys. And I could hear my grandpa's voice ring out. He was just like, ah! So I felt like he knew and he wanted to wake up my grandma so much, But who knows, maybe, now, Rosey had a similar experience. I think after her husband, Howard, died, she kind of always felt like she was hanging out to keep an eye on things. And so once she met up with Gary, she felt like that's when he went about his business. So sometimes when somebody dies, they may hang around the person they care about before they go on to the next thing. And that might be why we didn't really hear much from my grandma, because her partner was there. Maybe my grandpa was waiting on the other side. She had to go on to maybe reincarnate just for putting her foot in her mouth before she died, right? Let's see now, but I want to get on to Rosey because as much stuff as we've talked about as far as spiritual stuff goes, I expect a lot more contact from her too. And now earlier in my last vision, I think the thing that really made me think I should talk about this now is I thought there was a knock at the door before that being came in and dragged me out of my body and we wrestled. In another instance, it's not sure if we're dealing with an unfriendly spirit or maybe one of my teachers. Hard to say what that was about, but the interesting thing was hearing that knock at the door before being finding there was a being in my apartment parallels to when I think Rosey showed up. So sometime after she died, I was sleeping back here And it was early in the morning, and sometimes early in the morning, that's when I start to get to a state where like I'm kind of between sleeping and awake, and it sounded like somebody knocked at the door very clearly. I mean, I was like, oh, I get kind of worried because I'm always afraid, somebody I don't want, like like the landlord's going to come here to ask about Rosey, I don't want to have to open the door and deal with that first thing in the morning, right? So first thing was like, oh no. So I kind of hesitated, but then I felt like because I was in that half awake state, almost like that. I'm not gonna say sleep paralysis, but it's sort of like I'm asleep, but if I'm able to be aware of it's like somewhat like out of body, but so there's been times where I feel like you kind of have that wakefulness, kind of like when Master Tay was getting the monster in his room. I've had other instances where I felt like I'm awake, and I don't know, it's like I was reaching out of my body with just my hands, so you could be in partial astral travel, so to speak, or awake on that level while your body's asleep. So that was in that sort of state, and that's where I felt like I could see through the wall, and I could see Rosey fly through the house, like the door's over here, and I heard the knock. I worried just a moment, but then I saw Rosey just kind of whooshing through the house, from back to front. Like she was like happy that she was free out of her body that was just, full of cancer, couldn't stand. Last time she was alive, she pooped her pants, so she was happy to be out of her body. And I think partly to let me know that she's here, and partly to let me know what a happy state of mind she's in. So now I sat with Rosey and Gary as they each died, and the day that Gary died, he was over here in a bed. So I bought these curtains just to make Gary's room nice. I'm going to show quickly our point of view. So Gary was set up along this window, and he was looking outside. And we've been keeping an eye on Gary to like help him to the toilet and stuff like that. And he said something like, "I gotta go now." And he was looking out the window and saying, "I gotta go now." And I felt like I knew what he meant. Like he's going to die today. And I thought, but I wasn't sure. I wasn't ready to believe that. So I was like, "What do you mean? You gotta go to the bathroom?" He goes, "No, I gotta go." But then he thought, well, maybe he should try to go to the bathroom, and he didn't need to. So he tried to pee or something. He didn't need to, something like that. So that's where he did die that day. And I realized, oh, when he said I gotta go now, that's what he meant. So I think when he was looking out the window and laying there on his side, like he was getting contact. So some people, they see spirit beings before they die. Maybe he was seeing, the gateway, the light was shining down and angels appearing. Who knows? But it sounded like Gary was in good hands. And so then Rosey lived for a few more months. And when it was getting to be her last week, and I was having to sit here and feed her pills, and she said Gary came to her and let her know that everything is going to be okay. And she'd also been contacted by her daughter Freya. Her daughter Freya actually committed suicide some time ago because she was in severe pain from a bone spur in the back of her neck, and she just didn't want to live her life in pain and on meds and things like that. So she told me what she was going to do. So it's kind of eerie, she told me what she was going to do, and she did it. She put herself to sleep. And but she did everything to cross over in a good way. And so when Rosey was contacted by her daughter Freya, who is named after the goddess of love, of course, she felt that Freya was in the spirit realm helping a lot of people, people with addictions and things like this. So like, even though she died of suicide, she was in the spirit world actively helping others. See? So there's colorful information. So before she died, she said she saw this little square open up. And I've seen the same thing. So it's kind of weird how we see these like square-shaped doorways, and it's like a portal. She's seeing a portal open up in front of her over here, right? And so when she was ready to die, I knew it. Because I had practice on Gary, so I helped, tried to help them through it. Just, like, hey, you're dying, And she was good and ready. Like, she really wanted to live another, I don't know, 20 or 40 years. But I think when she knew she was going to die, she was like, okay. I think before she started going down, she said, because I'm just like, Rosey, I don't know what I'm going to do. I can't really take care of you and work at the same time. I'm really frustrated. She goes, well, don't worry about it, Jody. I think I'm about to die soon here. So once she said that, it seemed like she was able to get her head ready, and she was right here where I'm sleeping practically. Like her bed was parked right in the middle of that room, and she got to where she wasn't moving a whole lot. So I think it took her like 3 days of just not being able to move a whole lot, and then I went in there, and Friday I knew it, man. She was getting that cold, hard feeling. I knew she was getting ready to die. So I made sure her favorite show was Ancient Aliens, and it would come on Friday back to back. So perfect timing because it was a Friday, and I had her video playing all day. Because even though she's laying there like half asleep or whatever, I know she could listen, and I knew she could hear me. So I sat and I talked to her, and I sang to her, and stuff like that. And so I tried to make sure, I called it a going away party. I said, we're going to have a going away party for you because, for her to die and get out of that body is going to be quite a relief. So when she came flying through that door, it was really good confirmation that it was indeed a good relief and stuff like that. So she certainly wasn't too unhappy about it, right? But other than that, I think I've only had a few dreams about Rosey too, that there could be like I don't know if it's just your imagination or if maybe you're connecting with them on some level. And I want to think like I saw me, her, and Gary. We were kind of riding around in this little thing where the person in the middle had a stick, I think Gary was in the middle and he had the stick and he was like driving it. And it was almost like we were up on big mountain. Like in wintertime, it snows really deep. So like they plow the road. So the roads are all white and the walls are all white. And it seemed like we were in a place like that in this little thing, and we were kind of like cruising around. So it was almost like an alpine slide ride or something like that. And it was kind of vague and surreal, but it was really fun. And I felt like me, Rosey, and Gary, because what we used to do is we go for truck rides together, right? So that was our vehicle in that dream. So it's like it was fun. Like they were like two little kids having fun. So it kind of implied that maybe they met up in the afterlife, And then another dream I had about Rosey, so I've talked to her about Bill Lead quite a bit, and I remember even she said at some point she had a dream that she and her were visiting, and they were sitting in a room facing the Pacific Ocean. And so I felt like there's a part of her that wouldn't mind meeting him and chatting with him because she's really knowledgeable of art and stuff like that. And I let her know that Bill Lead is actually an art collector, and the woman he's married to is an artist and stuff. So he's like really into that whole thing, and I could see those guys making friends and talking about that type of stuff, So I think that's kind of what it was. It was like we were going for a ride in Bill Leib's car, and he had like I don't know what kind of vehicle it is. It wasn't like my truck, It was more like I don't know, a Range Rover or a Land Rover, something like that, and something that probably costs a lot of money, but something that's kind of a bigger vehicle that you would own if you want to, take it off road and, go out to the woods. And so it seemed like Bill was at the wheel driving real nice and careful. He had on glasses and he was wearing a hoodie, and he just looked kind of like he would probably look in real life, he's kind of got this blondish hair that's like and he goes like this and he's like at the wheel carefully driving, and I felt really safe too. Like he seemed extra careful, and we were surrounded by the mountains. It seemed like late afternoon, evening, and the sun's going down and it's raining, and just super careful. And that location makes me think of kind of the mountainous area up here just north of the border here, probably in the bottom side of like if you'd like were in Vancouver and you were going in our direction, maybe take Highway 3 through those mountains. It looked like just big steep mountains, very realistic. And Rosey and Bill were talking back and forth, and I was listening to them talk, and we were enjoying ourselves, and it was just really brief, but I felt like it was just kind of like bringing us together in that moment, and kind of like with me, Rosey, and Gary taking a truck ride, something I like to do, something I would hope to do if I had a chance to chill without Bill Leave, as well as it may take some rides up to those mountains and see their neck of the woods, right? That would be fun. So not a bad dream there. And then and another one was kind of strange. So maybe this is one of the places Rosey hangs out in her afterlife. It seemed like we were at a very small village on top of these mountains. And where we're at seemed kind of leveled out. Like there were some, I don't know if they were just dirt roads, but you could see a few roads and some buildings here. And then over here you could see kind of a mountain point. So it made me feel like we were close to the tops, because I knew if I just went up this trail, it'd get me to the top of that mountain. I could go up this trail, get to the top of this mountain. So it seemed kind of a very foresty place with a lot of evergreens. And next thing I knew, so we were walking too. It seemed like Rosey was perfectly well and able to walk, and but kind of like out of my view. Like it's like I knew I was with her, but I couldn't see her. And then I was riding on top of this vehicle, because it's kind of, this is where it's sort of surreal. Like, what kind of vehicle is it? Almost seemed like a school bus with burlap or something on top of it, and I was hanging on. And she was driving, and we were going down this mountain road pretty quick. It was like paved, and it had lines, but it was just, two really narrow lanes, and then there's a little bit of a drop off. But then beside us were just really tall, pointy mountains, and it seemed like we were kind of on a road that's on a downhill slope too. So it seemed like we were boogieing pretty fast, and I was kind of hanging on and riding this thing like a horse, and kind of watching the side of the road, hoping she wasn't going over the edge, but then thinking, oh, well, she's keeping it on the road. But it kind of reminds me of like when I very first came here, and she wouldn't let me drive her truck. Once I became the driver, then I was her chauffeur. But she always did all the driving, and she took me up to Glacier National Park. So maybe that's the parallel. It's kind of like coming down from Glacier National Park, but it seemed like a much different set of mountains, but the similar vibe of her being the driver and me being her passenger. But the surrealism was being on top of the vehicle now. That takes me back to some other dreams. I can't remember. Maybe I'll have to share those later. That before 9/11 happened, I kept having dreams that I was riding on. I've had 2 or 3 dreams of riding on top of the airplane instead of inside of it. So very similar. I was riding on top of the vehicle instead of inside of it, and hanging on to some sort of fabric. And those stand out, kind of like me and her just having fun together. So that could just be a lot of brain noise and something in my imagination. Or in those dreams, those 3 different dreams, I could actually be connecting with Rosey, and possibly Rosey and Gary in one dream, Rosey and Billy in another dream. And instead of being in a white space, like the white light, we're in a dreamscape situation. So we could actually be dreamscaping at times when people cross over, like so a couple different friends. Just recently, my friend Jim was talking about the time his mom died. Now, she was paralyzed before she died. So when she died, I think he had a dream, or somebody he knew. No, I think it was somebody who knew had this very, very clear dream that she was dancing and just moving around, and just how glad she was to have her legs. And a good friend of mine, Janet from Denver, Colorado, her father died. And she had a real clear, vivid dream that he was also showing off his legs, like, look at me, I can dance, I can da, 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 da. So when people cross over, sometimes their relatives see them showing that they're very happy that they have a body with good legs. And maybe those people appear to be in their 20s again, like they have their youth back, and they're usually very glad to be alleviated of their body. And that's where when I dreamt that, or I can't say I dreamt it, it seemed like I was half awake, and maybe she really did come back as a ghost and come flying through the house just to let me know how glad she was to be alleviated of her rotting carcass. No, just kidding. Right. So when you get that old, I think when you're getting close to dying, or if you're like really sick, you can actually be looking forward to being alleviated of the body. But at the same time, what happens after we die is so mysterious. We really hate to find out that this is all we've had. So I think there's a little bit of fear that this is all you're going to get before you die. It could be just blackness, or you could just go straight to hell in a handbasket, for all we know. But I don't think it's really that harsh. I feel like there's a lot of misunderstanding that comes from Christian people. That isn't the message God wants us to have. God doesn't want to give us that same message. Sometimes the information being transferred, if there's any chance that God's word is being transferred through the Bible, we got to look out for when people get their tongue in the middle of it. You're not talking directly to God. You're going through several translations and different people with intentions before that gets down to you. That you got to read the Bible with the attitude that it's put there for your confirmation. And that's why I really enjoyed going through it. I actually felt like, I was visited by Jesus back in 2009 before I moved to Montana, and a couple years later, someone gave me a Bible that was translated for modern times, and so I read it. And thought, you know what, that really, there were things in there that made me feel like there was a good chance I really was contacted, and the discussion I had was very relevant, and that there was moments of confirmation. So that's where I'm like, that is there for your confirmation. So, and that not all of the information we need is in it. That's why you also need to be flexible, and most importantly, again, maybe not everybody has time for this, but if you can do stuff, say, to improve your psychic awareness in the true sense. Now, when we talk to Christians, they're like, oh, don't do that. You open yourself to the dark side. Yeah, spirit beings will come to you. And so that's why people who are clairvoyant or gifted, sometimes they have problems because the spirit world knows they can contact them. And so sometimes they get bad ones and ones to confuse you and throw you off track if you have a lot of... like you might be somebody who's going to do a lot of good things for people. And that's what I was told is that I have the empowerment to do a lot of good things for people. And so sometimes I run into adversity, and could be why I've also had to face that attack that I described in my last video. Master Tay from the Kung Fu, somebody in a position to reach a lot of people in a good way, also come under attack in the last video. And Rosey was in a wheelchair. She believed that when she was a helicopter mechanic, had faced spiritual battle out there, that spirit beings had caused her to have the accident, that were on the side of the bad side, so on the side of what we call Satan or the devil. So she felt that it wasn't just that accident, that it was because it's like the ability she has as a spiritual teacher, really needed to set her back. And so I really hope that doesn't happen to me or something like that. But sometimes, bad things are happening to us because there's a lot of good we can do in the world. So that's where, like, we have to understand there's the life after death thing, that they want us to understand, so people don't use that against you, make you fear for your life in order to get you to do things you shouldn't do. Otherwise, you have to say no. And that's what Rosey did. Is she said no to the being who wanted to make a deal. She said no. And that's why she was punished, see? Because she was not afraid to be put to death. So it was her fearlessness. So it wasn't the end of the line for her, but it definitely set her back quite a bit. And so, we're going to have to take all these stories with a grain of sand here, because I'm talking about another story. I'm going to have to explain more detail on some of the stories that Rosey shared with me while we lived together. And so after all the stuff that we've shared, I felt like the contact I had with her was pretty little. It was just maybe I saw her fly through the house. Maybe I had a few dreams. Other people have waking experiences where they wake up and the person's standing right there, or just really vivid dreams where they've seen people showing their legs. So mine was just a little bit lighter than all these other experiences. And if you go into YouTube and scroll through the near-death experience videos, there's a lot of stories that are probably way better than mine anyways, but thought I'd go ahead and share, what little experience or knowledge I have of it anyways. So may you have a nice day, and I will talk to you soon. Happy 420, you potheads. Ha!